Hi there, and welcome to the Study and Learning Centre's workshop series for HDR research candidates. I'm Dr. Jen Anderson, and this workshop is the second of two on academic style with a focus on grammar. We hope it'll assist you to develop a confident academic writing style and give you key pointers for noticing how other research writers use grammar to good effect. In the first workshop, we identified strategies for writing a clear argument using what Kamler and Thompson have called a hands-on hip stance, and how to create a cohesive and coherent flow of information by fronting your argument and using clear signposting. This workshop will attend to style and grammar issues, including nominalization, academic language versus passive, referencing techniques, using tentative language, and borrowing language strings from other writers to use in your own writing. Our choices about style and grammar are often determined by our research aims and claims. However, we'd like to discuss the grammar that most good researcher authors favour. Now, in spoken English, we use a lot of action words and we repeat ourselves to make sure the listener gets our message. But in written academic English, it is possible to pack more information into noun groups and make the language more concise, because the reader can take more time to interpret the meaning. Nominalization is the process of turning action words or verbs into nouns, things, or states of being. So look at the two pairs of sentences below and how they differ. And which one do you prefer and why? I want you to pause the video now and have a consider, just think about this for a while. Then click on pause again and go to the next slide. So here's the way I think about it. In this sentence, it's very active and immediate, and it's also quite informal. It's very much sort of story-based. In this sentence, we can see how by bunching the nouns together, the rapid increase in crime and concern among police, we sort of take away the action, and the language becomes more condensed and it becomes cooler in tone. It's sort of more objective. But we can also see the cause and effect much more closely, the relationship between the two ideas. Let's look at the second one now. In this one, we need two sentences. So it's a little bit clumsy, and it sounds like a story someone's telling rather than something that's written. With this final one, you can see again how the nouns are clustered together. The invasion of Poland, the immediate cause of the outbreak of the Second World War. So there's very few action words, in fact almost none, and in so doing that, you create this very strong causal link between the invasion of Poland and the outbreak of the war. Now, the only downside of this is that there are more prepositions that creep in. You've got the invasion of Poland and the immediate cause of the outbreak of World War II. So this is something we need to pay attention to. We try not to have too many of these prepositions in a string. Now look at this. This is another little paragraph or few sentences. Have a look at them. You can see how the action words are in bright blue. The kind of the key nouns are in red. And in that pale blue, we've got prepositions. So the first two statements here include a lot of verbs, a lot of action words, yeah? And there's also repetition in the sentences. We've got repetition about oxygen, repetition about humans and their health. Now, In the second version, there's only one sentence and gets rid of unnecessary repetition by creating these noun clusters: forest vegetation, life-sustaining capacity, Brazilian rainforest, depleted supplies. And you can also see how the verbs or action words demonstrate clear relationships between the ideas in the sentence. Generate, has led to, will result to. This is a kind of chain of cause and effect. Now, this chain is not evident in that first version. Pause the video now if you'd like to make a closer comparison. Now, we do have to be careful that we manage nominalisation so that the text remains readable and doesn't become too dense. Now, Judith Butler is a scholar and a thinker that I admire enormously. So I do not denigrate her ideas, but rather we're looking at how her writing is so dense that it's quite difficult for the reader to understand. I think that this example is over-nominalised and it makes comprehension very difficult. If the writer identified the key issue and then breaks this long sentence up into two or maybe three sentences, it would be much easier for the reader to understand what she's saying. It would slow the writing down, and sometimes that's actually a good idea. Another weakness of nominalisation is that it can hide or underemphasise the impacts of human agency, the negative impacts of human agency. Look at these three examples. They are very cool, they're almost icy. And when we really look to understand what they mean suffering, great deal of suffering for humans. It's important to make sure that your academic tone matches the moral or emotional weight of what you're writing. The detonation of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki resulted in widespread mortality, for example, is rather cool, and it sounds vaguely monstrous. Now, a style better suited the message is to make it more active and assign responsibility. When American planes dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, tens of thousands of Japanese civilians died. Even this, I think, is a little bit removed because the planes have become responsible rather than humans. Many of you have been told that an academic voice uses the passive tense. Now look at these two sentences. Look at these two sentences and decide which sounds more authoritative and why. Pause the video while you think about it. That's right. B is actually more controlled because it fronts the research method and that actively leads to the results. Now look at sentences 2A and 2B. So in these examples, I like 2B the best again because it gets to the issue much more quickly. Now it's interesting that we can have a section that discusses. A section can't probably discuss, it's usually the writer. But in academic writing, research becomes like an active agent. Sections, theses, all of the papers, they all become active agents. They can discuss, they can reveal. Now, the passive voice has been viewed as better at persuading the reader of the objective and reliable nature of the research, but it can also distance the reader so that they feel uninvolved, and it can result in too many words. It becomes overwordy. So try to keep a balance in your writing where possible. So what are the basic functions of the passive voice? Well, first, it's feeling of objectivity, and second, it's used if the subject is unknown. For example, over 20 contaminants were dumped into the lake. This actually highlights the contaminants rather than the people who dumped them. That's not so interesting in this case. So it indicates what's most relevant to the research. Now, often the agent or the actor is not relevant in research. The researcher themselves is not so important as the way in which the research was conducted. And that's because if you follow the procedures, the research procedures, then anybody should get the same results. And that's really what the focus is. Third, it emphasises the object. As I said above, the 50 cubic metres of soil or the 20 contaminants, that's where the focus is. It's not on the person. Notice how other researchers in your field make use of these active and passive verbs. Let's have a brief look at citations or in-text referencing. Read these two sentences carefully and note their differences. There are two differences, and have a look again at sentence one and see if you could make two possible changes to it. Pause the video while you have a look. As you can see, sentence one is written to place the author in a position of prominence. We put the author first when we want to emphasise that they've offered something significant in relationship to our research or the research of others. Sentence two has the author at the end of the sentence and the information in a prominent position. The writer is using Smith to build an argument based on the evidence. We might also note that in the first sentence, the writer has quoted Smith, while in the second, the writer has paraphrased. When we see a quotation, we understand that this is a significant idea, a sort of essence of the current research, and we'll expect the writer to explain it in some detail. When we see a paraphrase, we understand that the writer is interpreting Smith for the purpose of building a new argument. A third suggestion, this is a suggestion. Sentence one can be improved upon by changing the reporting verb stated. Now, this verb is neutral and doesn't show that the research writer has analysed what Smith's intention is when he makes this announcement. A better reporting verb is suggests, because it shows that the writer understands Smith to be explaining why a problem exists. And often we use the word suggests when we're paraphrasing discussion sections from research articles or theses. So using a simple reporting verb like suggests shows that you've analysed what Smith's intention is. And finally, in the first statement, we should change the verb tense to the present, not stated, but states. If we use the past, stated, that means that this claim may no longer hold any value in the present. We think that Smith has changed his mind. So the present tense suggests that Smith's view has not changed, that it has as much value now, just as it did in 2014. Here's a list of useful reporting verbs. They're divided into tentative, neutral, and strong. All of these are valuable. It depends on the context and the way you seek to use them for your purposes. Some of the neutral reporting verbs are particularly useful. Think about when you might use them. So download this sheet from the Learning Lab so that you can keep it handy for when you're writing your literature review and discussion sections. There's a link on the Know How site. Let's have a look at hedging. Hedging is an essential skill in academic discourse because claims to fact can be very dangerous, particularly in fields that explore human behaviour or thought. Theories themselves are generalised, non-absolute accounts of how something works. So even theories are not facts. We need to get used to using hedging words to qualify our statements. And here are some examples. There are adverbs, verbs, and nouns. Pause the video while you have a look at them. We use hedging to report the limits of our findings. We use it to temper our certainty of an observation. We use it to protect ourselves from the risk of error and to demonstrate credibility. But be careful that you don't hedge too much so the reader thinks you have no confidence in your research claims. These examples of double and triple hedging are excessive. And very importantly, when you do not need to hedge, when you can talk completely straight about something, then do it. For example, all writing is of its nature subjective because the writer has selected the topic and thesis perspective as well as the evidence to support their claims. Then I don't think that this claim requires any hedging. Start noticing how research writers hedge in their articles and what aspects of your research require hedging in writing and what aspects do not. Our final recommendation is to borrow sentence fragments or word strings from other writers. Here are 7 examples. Pause the video while you look at them and ask yourself, are these useful for me in my field and for my topic? And where can I find more of these strings to use for my writing? The answer to that is other theses and all the research articles that you're reading for your literature review. So what have we been looking at in this workshop? Academic style is created using grammar techniques such as nominalization, passive and active voices, citations such as author and information prominent citations, and paraphrasing or quotations, verb tenses, reporting verbs, hedging, and syntactic borrowing. Start to notice how other academic writers use these techniques and start using them yourself. There are links to additional PowerPoint presentations on some of these grammar issues, and don't forget to visit the RMIT University Learning Lab and the library. If you've got any questions or suggestions yourself, please join the Graduate Research and Know How discussion forum. We'd love to hear from you. Here are the references. And here's A little saying on grammar from Ludwig Wittgenstein. Like everything metaphysical, the harmony between thought and reality is to be found in the grammar of the language. Cheers.